franchises that have learned to live with disappointment over the years, the Dallas Cowboys made the decision to pay Dak Prescott. Now, I am very against this decision. The Cowboys have been under 500 with Dak Prescott healthy and on the field. Now taking over 13% of the salary cap, which has been a number that not many quarterbacks have won with, specifically a Super Bowl, much less many playoff games. Can Dak Prescott lead this team at that salary point?
Honestly, especially with that injury, I don't think so. That injury, my anticipation is that he will not be playing the same as he did before. I was very disappointed with this last season because I felt like even with Prescott in there, he was putting the whole team on his back. And even with that injury, like it just made it worse. And then I thought Andy Dalton was going to be really good. He ended up not being so great, and then the team kind of just fell apart. But I don't know, man. The thing that I don't like about big pay contracts like that is that when we paid Zeke, he stopped caring. He doesn't play the same. He's that player that just knows either way he's going to be guaranteed the money. And then unfortunately, we're going to start losing players with that Dak contract, like Amari Cooper. He's still playing with heart. He's still in it for the team. He last season he did his best whichever way he can. I like Cooper a lot, but unfortunately, I think down the line we're going to lose him and players like that. Honestly, I don't know if Prescott's even worth that money.
See, the problem is when you pay a franchise quarterback that amount of money, you have to get younger, you have to get cheaper, you have to do all these extra concessions at other positions to make it work. And that includes, obviously, I think the Cowboys are in good spot at wide receiver. If you do have to let Amari Cooper walk, that's why you drafted a guy like CeeDee Lamb. But we saw how bad that defensive backfield already was out the gate. And their big offseason acquisition, Keanu O'Neal, is a fun safety to watch. He's a guy that can lay down that boomstick, but he's not a good cover safety. And if you look at one of the things the Cowboys struggled with, they weren't covering anyone. They weren't stopping the running game. That defense was abysmal, trash. It got a little better by the end of the year. I mean, hell, they beat my Niners. I'll give you that. You beat Nick Mullins. Congratulations, guys. But overall, that defense was not winning them any games. And I agree with what you said. You're going to start losing players. It's just going to be impossible to start paying guys after a point. So even if you do get a star, keeping them around enough to continue to compete is going to continue to be a problem. You might even cut Zeke by next year. Amari Cooper might not be in the roster in a couple of years. That offensive line that has carried the Dallas Cowboys to multiple wins and multiple statistically great seasons is starting to diminish. I mean, La'el Collins, all these guys have started to either retire or leave. You just can't pay these guys anymore. So I think the Cowboys are in one of the worst spots in the league. What say you, Joe?
Yeah, on the Cowboys, it's interesting to see what they did. And you touched on Neal. Neal's going to go from safety to linebacker, so he has to make that adjustment in the Cowboys. You got Dan Quinn running the system now, right? In as a defense coordinator, the Cowboys' defense got better as the year went on last year. But what have they added this year? Nothing. I mean, besides Neal, you expected them to go out there and make big plays, and they haven't done it. And the Dak Prescott contract, I'm always against quarterbacks getting paid big money. I think the Cowboys should have done it 2 years ago. They played him for no reason. They let him on to pay him all this money now. They should have done it 2 years ago. Could have got him a lot cheaper. Amari Cooper's deal, it's horrible. You should have just let him go to the Washington football team when they were offering him that big money. I know there's a rumor out there that they might trade Michael Gallup for Gilmore. Does that help out? I mean, really, you're going to bring another high-priced player in? I don't know if that's going to work for the Cowboys. But, I mean, the Cowboys are the Cowboys, and Dak Prescott puts up yards, and I'm not going to rule him out, though. I just talked about it earlier that I still see the Cowboys as probably the second best team in that division.
Second best team in the division, but that division has been maligned over the years.
That's not saying much, right? That's
right.
not saying
much. Honestly, it's unfortunate to even hear that rumor about Gallup too. He's another player that I like a lot. The one that plays with heart and it isn't worried about the money at all. It just, I hate to see it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the tough things about just paying a quarterback. And that's why I'm just so against this idea of paying for mediocrity. yes, I like Dak, and I can sympathize with his plight being this plucky 4th-round pick that managed to succeed against all expectations. But game paid second most to Patrick Mahomes, game paid more than Russell Wilson, who has won a Super Bowl, game paid more than Deshaun Watson, who had infinitely more college success, has won at the pro level, game paid more than these guys, MVP Aaron Rodgers, or certainly the greatest of all time, Tom Brady. I just think that the justification for Dak having that money at that price point doesn't make sense for me. Even if you tell me the cap is going up, sure. He's still taking up over 10% of that cap. And when you just look at the sheer statistical numbers of quarterbacks that have made that price range, it is not added up. And then you look at the record with Dak in general, not counting the contract he's about to get paid. He has been a below 500 quarterback over the last couple of years. Even before the injury, he was struggling. The only reason he had such great statistical success is the team was behind. When a team is behind, how Blake Bortles had great passing statistics because his team was behind. And that's exactly what Dak had the benefit of throwing on his resume or throwing to his agent to be able to pitch to Jerry Jones in these meetings. Yes, I agree with you, Joe, that he could have got his contract a couple years ago from the team. It could have been at a cheaper rate, but even that cheap rate we're talking about, I know that the Dak Prescott cap was throwing out numbers like 35 million, 40 million. And I would, if I'm putting a hard number on it, honestly, based on the other contracts in the league, I don't think you can make a case for me that Dak Prescott deserves to get paid over 30 million a year. That's where I'm setting the number at. And maybe, hey, I don't get to re-sign him. So what? Go play for the Buffalo Bills and see what average contract that works out to. Go play for Chicago. But if I'm NFL GM, Juju Talk Sports, I'm not paying Dak Prescott. I'm letting him walk. I'm franchise tagging him. I'm doing whatever it takes. But to be honest, I don't think I'm paying him. I don't give him all that long-term deal. I don't know if anyone wants to fight me on that one.
Yeah, and then what sucks too is like that was a sad game to watch. I like Prescott a lot, and he's my quarterback. But even with that injury now too, that's gonna hold his performance back. He's definitely not gonna play the same with an injury like that. So if you think about the money, it's kind of like I like, this sounds so mean, but it's kind of like he's worth less now because of that injury. And the Cowboys still paid him that much. They still got him that contract. I agree they should have done it years ago. The Cowboys could have gotten themselves out of this bind, because now the rest of the team is going to lose players. Now we're going to lose good players that don't even have those contracts, but they're thirsty for that win. And yeah, the Cowboys, man. I'm a huge fan, but they always love to make moves that disappoint.
Well, who's the example quarterback that everybody wants to look at? It's Tom Brady. What does Tom Brady do every single year? He takes a pay cut.
Yeah.
Why does he take that pay cut? So you can get more players under that salary cap. And all these teams that pay their quarterback big money, and that's why I'm a Raider fan and I want to keep Derek Carr. Why? Because I look at his contract. Why do 49er fans want to keep Jimmy G? Because of his contract. Because you can negotiate that contract. And they play well enough to win games. All these teams that have great quarterbacks and you're paying them big money, they end up struggling. They end up getting exposed. Yeah, you can make the playoffs, but that's where you're going to get exposed. Russell Wilson, you're getting exposed. Why? Because you're paying him so much money, you're not going after the offensive line. So when you're paying Dak Prescott and you're not paying your defensive players, you're going to get exposed. Yeah, Dak might get you somewhere. He might win a division game for you, but he's not going to win you that Super Bowl because you're spending so much money on him. And I think you're onto something, Juju, with $30 million is a lot of money. Players are worth whatever is going to offer them. I'm never going to say that, but $30 million for a quarterback. When do we stop paying these quarterbacks? That's what I've been asking for a long time, because now you got Lamar Jackson coming up. You have Josh Allen coming up. Is it expectation in the NFL? They always do. It doesn't matter how great your skill is. It's always the next man up. If you're a free agent and you're a free agent at that quarterback, you better beat out that last one. So they're gonna have to beat out Dak's contract. They're gonna have to beat out Patrick Mahomes, but they're not better than them. And that's what I don't get. Like, where do we draw the line? And I think $30 million a year should be good enough. And we have enough stats coming out that say when you pay the quarterback, your team suffers.
Yeah, I think one of the contracts that is going to be the interesting barometer for quarterback contracts moving forward is going to be Baker Mayfield. That's a contract that I'm kind of like putting my eyes on to see how that one comes out. Because if I look at what Baker Mayfield's done to this point in his career, if you told me between 25 million and 30 million a year, I believe you. I think that's fair for what Baker Mayfield has put out. Yes, he's got that playoff win, that big one last year, but the couple of years before that were kind of average. I mean, he had that big rookie season, but can we really measure big rookie seasons as a true assessment of how to pay a guy? No, because otherwise you would have been giving RG3 a huge time extension if you're Washington, right? I think when it comes to these QB contracts, there has to be a plateau. There has to be a moment in which we say, this is the furthest we can go without line stepping any further. Because we're already talking about Patrick Mahomes getting over $300 million or $500 million to play quarterback. We're already talking about Dak Prescott, who in even not just today's standards, but in past standards, maybe would have been a mediocre quarterback, a mid-range quarterback, getting paid over $100 million guaranteed. And you mentioned his name, Jimmy Garoppolo. And I love Jimmy. I think one of the biggest pushbacks on Jimmy Garoppolo is the fact that he got paid with such a short sample size of his playing career. But even him, like I think that we've started to hit a point where it's just like, we got to start paying reasonable salaries to this market because the rest of the teams are suffering. There hasn't been a success of one of these guys elevating their team any further. And at that point, what are you doing as a franchise? If you're saying, I'm going to pay this guy, sure, but I'm going to be mediocre for the next 10 years. And then when I'm mediocre and after I paid him, he's going to want to request out like what we're seeing with all the Deshaun Watson drama. You want to know why, Deshaun, they can't build around you? Because you're getting paid. It's as simple as that. It's like an equation. There's a set amount of money. You take up such a large chunk of that money. We have 53 other players or 55 other players or whatever it is now because of COVID to pay. That is why we can't pay you what you want and still expect to win games. And I think that we've started to hit that point. And I think, is there a going back point? I don't know. I think what it really comes down to is, can NFL teams actually have the gumption in their negotiating strategy to say no? No means no. Just say no. I think that's what needs to happen with NFL GMs and NFL ownership. Any closing thoughts, guys?
I think you're right on. We just need that team to say no. And will it happen? No, because you said Baker Mayfield, are you going to watch that contract? Are you going to be surprised? Okay, Baker Mayfield, 25 to 30. Okay, I see that, right? But are you going to be surprised if somebody offers him $45 million a season? No, and then you're going to be like, well, he doesn't deserve it, but that's what the going rate is. Like, I don't know. The 16 to 17% of the salary cap is what they say quarterbacks deserve, but I think it's crazy.
Yeah, I think realistically, the only way to really mitigate that moving forward is if you have quarterbacks legitimately take a percentage of their salary cap in their contract. I think that might be the only way. And then even at that, you have to make the case and make that argument for historically quarterbacks over this 13% marker haven't won Super Bowls. Will you be willing to take less than this indicated marker, which might mean you're getting paid less than 40 million, might mean you're getting paid less than 45 million, 50 million, whatever the salary cap is at that given time. And I don't think quarterbacks are going to be willing to do it, because I'll say this, as an entrepreneur myself, as someone that wants to make the most money possible in this capitalistic society we live in, I would tell you that if you told me, yeah, you could make $200 versus $100 or $150, sure, I would kind of rationalize it. But I think probably the biggest thing is because these guys are making millions of dollars. And for someone like myself, looking at this from an outsider perspective, they could probably live off $1 million as generational wealth. I look at a quarterback saying the difference between 45 million and 42 million and saying, oh, that's the difference between my generational wealth. That's the difference between my contract I could give my kids, my grandkids. I look at that. I'm like, really? You're telling me 42 million can't last you for the next 100 years? What are you spending it on? Where is this going? You know, are you just spending it all on tigers? Is that what's going on? Because apparently tigers are cheap now. They're only $2,000 paychecks. I could pay that off with my stimulus check if I want to. I don't know. I'm just bitter and drunk now.